Good morning, World History. How are you? Um, so today we're going to do a quick lecture on the American Civil War. I would like to make a quick note that this is going to be a completely simplified version of the Civil War, but we have to do this because the whole point of even going back over the Civil War is so that we can understand why Reconstruction matters. Reconstruction will be the next 2 weeks of this course, so it's extremely important that we cover this just because so you have some background knowledge. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. We're going to jump straight into this lecture, which is on a period of division, right? Which is the American Civil War. So the presidential election of 1860. So this is pretty important because it is the election of Abraham Lincoln that pushes the southern states to actually leave the Union and establish their own nation. So in 1860, Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln ran against each other again, this time for the presidency. Lincoln had become well known from their debates about slavery, and this time Lincoln won, becoming the 16th president of the United States. So these are the states. The red states are the ones that choose to stay. Not choose to stay. Sorry, I mean technically yes, but the red states are the ones that voted for Lincoln. The blue states are the ones that voted for John C. Breckinridge, which is the vice president of the United States at the time of the election under James Buchanan. The yellow votes for Stephen Douglas, and the green vote for John Bell. I would like you to note that if hold on, let me annotate really quick here. And let me do that in white. Okay, so all of the states below this line are slave states. States up here are no slave states. Okay, and out here, right? So here's the dividing line. So in other words, only states that do not have slavery voted for Lincoln. Okay, that's a very important thing to note. So Lincoln receives no support in the South, and because they believe Lincoln wanted to end slavery, since there's so many more people in the North, he won the election regardless of their support. So as soon as Lincoln won the election, the South started to leave the Union. This means that the South split from the Union. They no longer wanted to be a part of the United States. Supporters of secession based their arguments on the idea of states' rights. They had voluntarily joined the Union so they could leave when they wanted. There's a lot of people that say that the Confederacy was formed and the Civil War started because of states' rights. What people fail to mention is the second part of that sentence, states' rights in order to protect the institution of slavery. That is the most important thing I want you to take out of this lecture, is that the South left the Union to support their states' right, their belief in states' rights, to keep the institution of slavery, okay? So the Confederate States of America is formed from these states. On December 20th, 1860, South Carolina became the first state to leave the Union. They were followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. The 11 states that had seceded became the Confederate States of America, or the Confederacy. They named Jefferson Davis of Mississippi as president. Jefferson Davis had served as senator and secretary of war under President Franklin Pierce. They wrote a new constitution, which included an amendment to make slavery legal and unabolishable. A civil war is a war between people of the same country. There have been many civil wars across the globe, but one of the worst happened here in the United States. Over 600,000 people would die in the American Civil War just to prove that states do not have the right to keep people in bondage. The American Civil War was fought to keep the South from leaving the Union, and slavery was the major issue that separated these two entities. So the Civil War began at Fort Sumter on April 12, 1861. Fort Sumter was a Union fort in South Carolina, and the Union had a hard time defending it, and they surrendered 34 hours after the siege began. There were 23 states in the Union at the beginning of the war, and there were 11 states in the Confederacy at the beginning of the war. And here they are. Now, I disagree with this map a little bit. I'll tell you why. Missouri and Kentucky are considered, and West Virginia are considered border states, right? Half of Missouri actually sides with the South. This is the CSA here, and up here is the USA. It's actually a lot harder than you think it is with the mouth. So they side, and the other half sides up with the North, same with Kentucky. West Virginia actually was a part of Virginia. It was one big state. But after the Civil War, they actually split because West Virginia was more northern and the eastern part of the state was more southern. So they actually split. West Virginia is actually made a state in 1863. So pretty interesting, right? Indian Territory is also split. While there's actually a civil war with the Cherokee Nation because half sides with the South and the other half with the North. New Mexico Territory, half of it becomes Arizona Territory under the CSA because there's an incursion here. But other than that, most of this does not play a role. But up at the top, there is the Indian Wars up here. Okay, and we'll get into that in 2 weeks. But anyway, this is our playing field. All of these other states down here were part of the CSA. So the North's advantages. The North had some major advantages. They had they had many more people. They had many more factories, which could be used to make weapons and ships. The Union also had many more miles of railroad tracks. The South, the main advantage is that they were fighting at home. They were closer to their supplies, and they would fight harder because they were protecting their homes. Southern soldiers were also better equipped with the skills necessary to survive the war. They were better hunters, and they were better gatherers and survivalists. The president of the Union was Abraham Lincoln, who had been elected in 1860. The president of the new Confederate States of America, or Confederacy, was Jefferson Davis. But one of the first battles of the war was the Battle of Bull Run. The North realized after this battle that the war would not be easy and would not be over soon, as they originally had thought. The war would last for 4.5 years. Many new weapons were used during the Civil War. One of these weapons was an ironclad ship. An ironclad ship was a ship with iron plates on it to protect it from cannon fire. This is the beginning of the modern Navy that we have today. Before the Civil War, it was all wooden frigates. After the Civil War, our Navy is adapted to be more iron-focused, iron-plated. So some other new weapons is the deadlier cannons and bullets, rifles that were made more accurate. So this is kind of I love this story. So I'm like a military history guy, so bear with me here. So this bullet right here is the bullet that's used before the Civil War. This is the bullets that are used during and after the Civil War for the musket. So the musket is how it works. You drop powder in at the top. Then you drop the bullet, and then you push it all down with like a rod, right? Then you have a little cap that you put on the end. You cock it back. You aim, and you fire. The cap creates a spark, and then it ignites the powder, which shoots the bullet out of the gun. Okay? Now, here's why this matters. Before the Civil War, with this round bullet right here, the bullet would just bounce around in the barrel and then come out and just go wherever. So it wasn't very accurate. During the Civil War, a new mechanism within the barrel is built called rifling, which has grooves. And these little grooves on the bullet would match up with those grooves and keep the bullet straighter longer, which means when it left the barrel with more precision on aim, right? So if you ever watch like The Patriot or any other movie, any other like war-focused movie during this, that's like focused on this age, all these men, they line up in a line, right? One side aims and they fire, right? And then the other side does the same. And whoever runs first loses the battle, okay? That does not work in the Civil War. I mean, they still do it, but the casualties are so high because the guns have become more accurate, okay? That actually contributes a lot to death in the American Civil War. So, Battle of Antietam. So this is the first time the Confederacy invaded. It was a northern victory, was the Battle of Antietam. They were led by General Robert E. Lee. It began on September 17, 1862, and it lasted only 12 hours. It was the bloodiest battle day in United States history. 23,000 men lost their lives that day. The Union Army stopped the Confederate Army. This victory by the Union gave President Lincoln the chance to announce the abolition of slavery in the South. This is the Emancipation Proclamation. On January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation and declared that all slaves should be set free only in the Confederacy. It's very important that you understand that. It also allowed blacks to serve in the Union Army and Navy. South ignored the Emancipation Proclamation, but it did change the focus of the war clearly to the issue of the abolition of slavery. Women on both sides worked during the war. Many became nurses, and the most famous nurse from the Union was Clara Barton. She also helped organize the American Red Cross after the Civil War. Also, it is fair to note that women also actually served in uniform and fought alongside men, but they did so under the cover of being a man. So they didn't actually fight the war as a woman. The Battle of Gettysburg was one of the bloodiest battles of the war. It took place on July 1st through the 3rd of 1863. 97,000 Union soldiers fought, 75,000 Confederate soldiers. More than 50,000 men were killed or wounded in the battle. The Union won the Battle of Gettysburg, and many felt it was the turning point in the Civil War. Many Northerners started supporting the Army after this by lending them money to help pay for the conflict. This was called a war bond. Several months after the Battle of Gettysburg, President Lincoln went to the battlefield to dedicate a cemetery in honor of all those who had died. Lincoln spoke for 2 minutes, but his speech became very famous. It's called the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Sorry, I'm a nerd. In March of 1864, President Lincoln appointed General Ulysses S. Grant to lead the Union Army. November 6, 1864, President Lincoln was reelected as President of the Union. After several more battles, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Union General U.S. Grant. On April 9, 1865, the war was officially over. On April 14, 1865, while enjoying a night at the theater with his wife, Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth, who died at 7:22 a.m. the next morning. On December 6, 1865, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. This amendment abolished or ended slavery. And that's it today, guys. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. At the end of the week, you'll have a quiz. So make sure that you listen to this video thoroughly, and so that way you can pass the quiz. And I'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday, 9/9 for our Zoom meeting.